So I wanted to add a little bit more to my last podcast where I was talking about investing, and it's an interesting problem that we have, or an interesting way to think about this. But the way that I think about investing is um, all that we have, it blends into everything else, right? So what I'm talking about is the resources that we have at our fingertips, and it all blends in, and we sort of pick and choose to the best of our ability where we should allocate those resources. So those resources could be things like social capital, that's your friendships, for example. It could be things like, um, how much time you dedicate to your friendships. It could be other things like, so you have financial capital, right, at your fingertips, and you're figuring out how much I should dedicate, right? And that financial capital, the reason why it blends into each other is that you choose how much to actually spend on each relationship, right? You can spend a lot on your social capital, and spend a lot sort of developing that, but at the cost of, spending and saving for the future and sort of the financial side of things. And so all of this blends in together, and we're ultimately picking and choosing what we invest in, right? So if I spend more time, um, investing in my work, right, and sort of thinking about the financial side of things, and that sort of takes away from my family. And I have to find the right balance, and everybody has a slightly different balance. Roughly we have on average the same balance across everybody, but we sort of have different combinations of what we're investing in. And we're investing in both the sort of short term, maximizing our short term benefit with our long term benefit that we can actually get, given the cost that we actually have, right? Or given how much it's actually going to cost to make these investments. And what we're trying to do is balance how much we should invest in each one of these particular assets, or resources that we have at our fingertips, that maximizes our short-term benefit and our long-term benefit. Now, this is a difficult choice, right? There's a lot that's going on there, and I want to talk about that next. So here's the thing, though, right? Like with all those sort of distributing your resources accordingly, it's really complicated. I don't know how much I should actually dedicate to my kids. I don't know how much I should dedicate to my work. I don't know what is appropriate. And there is a lot of, not just complexity that's involved, but just not knowing, right? Like complete ambiguity of what is the right possible thing to do. And we never really know what the right answer is. I think a lot of this, and for good reason, right? So for example, right, you go and you invest your time into work, and you become moderately successful at work. You sort of take time away from your kids. You don't realize that maybe your kids would have, if you invested more time with your kids, they would have became the president, for example, and then or maybe something a little closer, a really good manager at a local Fortune 500 company and made millions of dollars. And then your kid, because they thought that you were a good parent, they gave you $2 million to your name, right? If you thought about it in that way, you don't really have a good sense of what you should dedicate, how much time and effort you should dedicate to one thing or the other, or even just to entertainment. Or on the opposite side, where you dedicate too much time to your kids, sort of pulls away from work, you're not able to get anything done, which is the conventional story everybody knows about. um, but you have to think about these kind of things, that we just don't know what is the right answer, and there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of what you should do. And I don't think that there ever is a right answer. That's the thing. I think if we simply got up and we just, maximized our day doing things, right? And I think that's the thing that we forget about, is that we only have a certain amount of time in a day. If we maximized our day with just doing things that are, moderately constructive, that go in a certain way. And what do I mean by that? It's okay to watch some television. It's okay to read some books and things, but then think about, like, are you actually putting and assembling resources together and doing that in a certain way? Now, you might think of, you might be, thinking of this in like kind of a negative way, but just doing things I think is very constructive. You could do a lot with your fingertips. But then the other thing to think about is you can do things with the resources that you have that you sort of just lend away for somebody else to do that, right? So that's kind of the way that I view investing is I'm just giving somebody some of my time and effort, and giving somebody else that time and effort and saying, hey, go run with that time and effort. Go do something with that. And, that's what financial investing is. And then they go and actually do something with it, turn it into something that's really cool, that you couldn't have possibly did yourself, or, you're just too busy, right? Like you had too much other of your own things. So I give some of my resources, or our family gives some of our resources away to other people to manage it for us so they can, I don't know what kind of companies I'm actually going to invest in. I don't really care. But as long as they're doing a moderately good job with that, and eventually sometime in the future, I actually get some returns from that particular effort. And I don't care what the returns are, if it's a social benefit, right? That's what I'm thinking about charity. Or if I'm thinking about on the financial side, I want some sort of returns financially so then I can take some more of that money back and reinvest in something else that I want to do, right? It's kind of um, a lot different than what most people think, right? And most people, and what we're thinking about here is how do you maximize your benefit, given with the resources that you have, so that in the long term you can actually grow, develop, and become, prosperous in all sorts of different ways, right? And there's no right way of doing this. That's the thing. There's some sort of rules, sort of rules in the sense that they're kind of arbitrary, but they help us sort of have guidelines. But then you can use those to do a better job of deciding what you should do, right? So for example, investing 15% of everything that you come in into S&P 500 index funds or mutual funds is a nice rule. It's not steadfast in any sort of way, and you can violate it at all times, but it's a rule to sort of give you some guidelines of what to do in the future. Or any number of things like this, not spending too much, like trying to get a 9 to 5 in, right? So that means you don't spend too much time with your kids, in family, and you actually dedicate some time to work. I think all of these things are really important, and we have to remember that they're just arbitrary rules that we're making up in our heads, that give us some guidelines and what to do. So if you violate those rules from time to time, that's totally fine, right? That's completely fine, and you should be forgiving of yourself and others when that happens. But just remember it's that sort of consistency of abiding by certain rules that help you out with growing the benefit that you have, now and in the future. So that's all I wanted to say. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.